Hi, I'm Lucian, the designer for Eden Left Behind, a mech exploration TTRPG. I've been playing and reading a lot of pretty modern role playing games, and I noticed a trend towards giving players agency over character death. These games where there's a built in plot armor. The player must choose to have their character die at 0 hit points or during a crucial moment. This isn't a complaint or anything. I actually prefer this style of play. But while playing a few of these games, I came across this problem. The stakes and tension aren't quite there. The consequences aren't harsh enough, and the alternatives to player character death often feels disconnected from the story. Something I like about these systems is that the story shines uninterrupted. Individual character arcs progress without fear of their plot threads being cut short. The game master doesn't need to worry about how replacement characters will fit into the narrative or how much the story will change because of it. But again, the trouble is the stakes, the tension. In a genre of game where possible player character death is supposed to be the biggest of stakes, and completely losing a fight can often mean the end of a campaign, what happens when that's taken away? Well, the answer that I found is a sort of artificial softness in the game. These plot armor games nearly always give an option for players to choose to sacrifice themselves for some big effect, but most people rarely choose that. If you're in the middle of a campaign, why would you sacrifice a character you worked on developing for dozens of hours of play just for one meaningful moment? Why would you ever choose that over, say, losing an item or getting kidnapped? In these games, a failure state is often not a real option. It's this fake threat that looms over the story, making the tension fizzle out as players realize that nothing bad will really happen. Let me be clear though, I prefer these games. As a GM, it lets me think of the future of what the story might hold. As a player, it lets me enjoy my character completely as intended. Occasionally, I just feel this lack of tension when using these systems. A frequent solution I see is removing magic items from a character. Instead of having a character die at 0 hit points, you just take away their magic sword or their magic armor. Say it broke during the battle. And I say magic items as a sort of catch all term for items that give special abilities in a game. This can be sci fi, modern, fantasy, whatever you want. Removing magic items is a valid solution, but it can often feel like the game master is doing it to the player rather than a villain to the character. Especially in games where magic items are a driving fun factor, removing fun from a player feels kind of backwards. Another solution I've seen is you either kidnap the character or you kill off a side character. These definitely work in TV shows and movies, but I find in play, kidnapping a character means narratively separating your friend at the table, making one player feel isolated while everyone else gets to have fun as a group. And killing off side characters can often feel undeserved. If the mission was already associated with saving that person, go for it. That is a totally fitting punishment for failure. But if it's a chosen consequence because the game says so, it can feel disconnected and more like a game mechanic, not a story beat. What the heck? We can't have item loss, kidnapping, or supporting character deaths? What are we supposed to do? I'll start by going system neutral, and then I'll give an example using Eden. This first one is actually a proactive solution. It happens before the death alternative, not during or after. Give player characters more responsibility. Give the protagonists people that need them, supporters that could cut their funding, towns that could starve. Make the world feel the loss, not the players. In the medieval setting, try making the adventurers the sole protectors of a town. A failed mission might mean harsh rationing during winter, heavy labor during work months, and townsfolk glaring at the party as they walk through town. Make the side characters they care about sick because raiders took the medicine while the heroes were unconscious. Burn down houses. Have people move towns because they lack proper protection. It can often seem like this is the same kind of thing as an item loss or a supporting cast death option, but the difference is that the consequence was already telegraphed. The players being responsible for the well being of others implies that their failure will ripple throughout the community. This brings me to the second way time. Let the recovery of being at 0 hit points or 0 wound slots or whatever take a really long time. What happens when a hero is in a coma for 3 or 5 or 10 months? What happens to the world when an important person is missing during times of struggle? Perhaps another party steps up to the plate, trying to finish what you started. You can run short montages for the other player characters, maybe some dreams for the coma character, but when that person wakes up, how have things changed? How have they changed? This sort of thing doesn't really work for a save the world kind of campaign, because the world would just end. But for most other stories, long time skips from injury can do wonders to a game. You can get some really rich role playing with this kind of thing. I'm playing in a Symbaroum campaign right now. My character is the leader of this growing town. He takes care of people of all walks of life, all religion, all backgrounds, as long as they give the same respect to everyone else in the town. If you've played Symbaroum, you know that this is a pretty rebellious thing to do. That game is a permadeath game, but imagine if it wasn't. Imagine if my character were to be knocked off a cliff, surviving, but barely, and then time passes 3 months. The kingdom might kick out all the barbarians he's housing. Heck, they might just kill them off. What about the kingdom folk that live there? What fate would they have? Banishment to the dark forest? Imprisonment? Death for being a sympathizer? All of those punishments would be the fault of my character failing, and he would wake up to find the town empty. Out of all options, though, I have a personal favorite, so of course, I put it into my game. I mentioned this briefly in the last video, but in Eden, you're a clone mech pilot. So when your pilot dies, you narrate a memory and rejoin the team via orbital drop in the next scene. But what happens when the whole team dies in one scene? Without time for anyone to rejoin? Well, your signal is lost. The mission is a total failure. The pilots lose vacation days and the story starts to reflect their loss. The situation system creates events that reflect the story. When something in the story feels like it would have lasting consequences, the GM or the player can opt in to add a situation to the character sheet. So let's say that the team fails to save a colony from this kaiju attack. On return to the Sunflower Station, the pilots face backlash from people who had friends, family on the colony. Maybe they blame one pilot in particular. The GM could then tell the blamed pilot to write the face your mistakes situation, a situation that describes events of people telling the pilot how they ruined their life, failed them, or the pilot sitting with their thoughts. Maybe your pilot stops taking vacation days altogether because they don't want to risk facing their failures. This mechanically means that the player isn't picking a random situation from the 3 they have available. That would mean that they stop hanging out with their friends. Their stability would worsen. They wouldn't improve their character. An unfortunately very real sequence of events. Eden isn't a bummer game, but it does take itself seriously. When something bad happens, the story and the rules reflect it. There are other consequence situations, this just being one of many, but as the story progresses, as the events of a situation are played out, the pilot might evolve the situation. They might decide that a rivalry with one particular person arises, or maybe they make amends and forge a friendship, or maybe the situation simply fizzles as time passes on. Player choice ripples throughout the narrative, not just by the game master's decision, but by mechanics. If so many things can be affected by rules, I don't see a reason why the story should be an exception. These solutions to stakes and tension in a role-playing game may not be as mechanical as others. There's no stats being affected, there's no abilities changing, but the story definitely feels it. The narrative reflects the choices that were made. So for games with built-in plot armor, try these out. Make the world feel the failure. Make time pass by. Have the characters be blamed. Have people be affected. This is all just my opinion on the topic, of course, so let me know in the comments how you feel about games with no or with optional player death. I'd love to hear about how other people feel about this. I'll be posting more content about game design, media analysis, and this game, Eden Left Behind. So subscribe if you're into that. Thanks for watching.